here. It's kind of hard to believe that it was just about a year ago that I was being introduced as the next police chief, or as the police chief in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. It's certainly been an honor to be able to serve in such a fine institution over the past year. I'm very humbled by the fact of the work that you see with our officers and the things that they have been able to accomplish, even through a pandemic and some of the uprisings that we saw last year. But there's been some great work that we're going to highlight today, and some things that you're going to hear about that might shock you and that might be of interest to the public to be able to know some of these things that we're going to talk about. So it's also look at just a few weeks ago, as everyone knows, you heard the announcement that Deputy Chief Estella Patterson is going to be the next police chief for the Raleigh Police Department. Chief Patterson is a good friend of mine, also has been a peer here and a great leader within the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I'm certainly proud of her announcement to be the next chief. She's well deserving. Raleigh has certainly made an excellent decision in their next leader for their police department. So as we transition into the quarterly update, I think these are important because we're able to look back at some of the things and measures of not just CMPD, but within our community, some of the things that we've been dealing with, and some of the dealing with safety of our citizens and how we're looking at protection and serving our public. So we also look at the numbers on ways that we can improve, on things that we can do better, with the ultimate goal of keeping our citizens and our public safe and making sure we accomplish those the best way that we know how. You know, as we look at halfway through the year, we've seen throughout our community, it seems like it's been such a long road already at this point, but also it's the same breath, it seems like it's happened so quickly that here we are already at July. I'm going to talk about, and you heard some of the numbers already, and you're going to hear more numbers, but as we talk about the numbers, you also have to understand that these are real people, real victims, people, their families of, I mean, their brothers, their sons, daughters, when we look at that. So the best way to be able to talk about it is through the numbers. However, we also have to realize that there are human beings behind each of these. You know, it's a mother that lost her son because of a senseless act of violence within our community. You know, it's a father who has to go to work every day with the nightmare and memory of having to stare down a barrel as a victim of a robbery. It's that young child who sits in their house that has to lay on the floor dodging bullets as gunfire shoots through their residence, not just once but multiple times. So those are the kind of things that bring the human side of the numbers to light. So this is why we work so hard. This is why you see CMPD and our officers that are dedicated to solve crime through investigations, through proactive work that we try to avoid the crime happening in the first place. I'm very proud to be the leader of such an organization of where we have officers committed to the safety of our public. And we're going to share a couple of those accomplishments here shortly. So it's encouraging that we've seen a drop, as you heard, in the property crime. But there is a component to that property crime that I think needs to be highlighted and people need to be made aware of. You know, as a community, I think we all need to do a better job in the responsibility of securing firearms. Because what we're seeing is firearms that are stolen are generally used in the commission of a crime. So when those firearms are stolen out of someone's vehicle, out of someone's home, we're seeing those firearms back on the streets being used in the commission of a crime. Now, this number is startling to me that you look at 2,139 community members, citizens within Charlotte, so far this year, halfway through the year, have been assaulted with a firearm. And 466 community members have been robbed with the use of a weapon. Now, as I said, we talk about the numbers. Those are real people that we're talking about here. That's an astonishing number when you look at it. You know, many of them didn't suffer that much harm, so it's probably things that a lot of people haven't heard about. So it doesn't go along with other cases where you hear about them being resulting in homicides or things like that, but these are things that are kind of lost in the numbers when we look at it. And none of that's acceptable. You know, although we do what we can and we see crime has dropped, and we're being successful so far this year, but we have to be able to be at a point to where none of this is acceptable, and we take every opportunity to make sure we address the violent crime as we see it. So to that end, I do want to share some of the tremendous work of our employees. For the first half of the year, our communications division has answered more than 457,000 calls to 911 and more than 1,200 texts to 911. Our officers have addressed more than 250,000 calls for service so far this year. We've seized 1,481 illegal guns as evidence, and 1,530 of the 6,750 arrests that we've made have been for violent crime. This work is great with both the excellent work by both our sworn and civilian staff, and some of the work that's resulted in the arrest of 48 homicide suspects, 21 rape suspects, 328 robbery suspects, and more than 1,100 suspects in aggravated assault. Again, I'm extremely proud of the work that our officers have done to be able to accomplish some of this, and because of that, there are some great units we're going to highlight here that have been behind some of that we've been able to focus and be intentional about some of these efforts. One thing I haven't mentioned was the armed robberies that are down almost 22% this year. There's no doubt that a portion of this is the reason of the hard work of the armed robbery unit and its supervisor, Sergeant Brian Scharf. I'm going to have Sergeant Scharf come up and talk about his work that he's been doing for more than 11 years. It's astonishing. He doesn't look that old, but he really is. So, Sergeant Scharf.